Well, if you have a Bible, go ahead and turn to the Gospel of John, chapter 6. We're going to be looking at the 14 verses of John chapter 6. So go ahead and turn there for us, please. I have been reading, or actually listening to a book. Usually when I exercise, I try to listen to books. Usually they're motivational books that kind of to push me, because I know some of you might be surprised by this, but when you look at me, you do not see Tom Brady, and so sometimes it takes a little bit of motivation for me to kind of exert myself, to push myself a little bit. So I am currently listening to a book that is been written by a retired Navy SEAL. And this guy has done some amazing things, not only for himself physically. He's done some incredible feats of strength, but also in his service to our country. He served alongside of in his training with men like Chris Kyle, the American sniper, and Marcus Luttrell, and the lone survivor. But this author was a little different than many of the people that became Navy SEALs, for he was himself an underdog. Nobody ever thought that he would make this kind of life for himself. He had, as a child, he was emotionally and physically and psychologically abused by his father, along with his mom and his brother. So much so that he suffered from PSD because of his own family circumstances. He struggled in school. And really, people just kind of wrote him off, thinking, this kid just is not going to make anything of himself. But he met with a military recruiter and thought, this might be my way to prove everybody wrong. So he thought, I'm going to enlist, and he was looking to go into the Air Force. He said, I'm going to go into the Air Force. But the problem that he had is that he wasn't able to pass the ASVAB to get into the military. So he failed it, and he studied hard and got with some people that kind of believed in him, and was finally able to pass the ASVAB so that he could enlist into the Air Force. Well, not only did he serve well in the Air Force, after he got out of the Air Force, he decided, I'm going to re-enlist, but this time I'm going to go into the Navy so that I can become a Navy SEAL. Now, the problem with this is, while, yes, he did pass the ASVAB to get into the Air Force, I mean, the Navy SEALs are the elite of the elite in our armed forces. They require a higher score in order to get into what they call BUD/S training. Before that, he was able, and he didn't have that score. So he had to kind of go back to the drawing board. Here he is, everybody's saying, you're not good enough to become a Navy SEAL. And so he studied and was finally able just to get his score to where he was able to get into BUD/S training. But while he was in BUD/S, he medically failed 2 times, because his body just couldn't handle the exertion, the physical demands of BUD/S training. But because he did not ring the bell, he did not quit on his own, he was able to come back. But the thing with BUD/S training is they only give you 3 chances to make it through. So on his last chance in BUD/S, he said, there is nothing that is going to keep me from finishing this school. So at the end of his training, it is the hardest of training. He had to make a long run in full body armor, and he did so having fractures in both of his legs. Anybody else would have just quit, but he knew that if he quit, that it was over. He would not be able to become a Navy SEAL. And this author was able to do things that he nor those that knew him as a kid thought was possible, because he pushed himself to the extent that most of us would say he's crazy, but for him, it was his opportunity to show that he was able to do things that were almost superhuman. It's For us, I don't know if you've ever struggled with this, but I know I do, that it's very humbling, uncomfortable, even scary at times for when you don't feel like you've got what it takes. You don't have the resources, you don't have the talent, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the ability to get a job done or to do or to provide what is necessary. You know, some other people that kind of struggled with this were Jesus' disciples. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, these are just ordinary guys, right? I mean, fishermen and tradesmen, and here they are. They're following Jesus Christ. I mean, a rock star. I mean, this guy is doing miracles, as they're going along, and they're like, we're just kind of just ordinary guy. How can we manage to do what Jesus has done? But we often find that as Jesus was doing his ministry, the disciples were underestimating Jesus' plans and his power, his ability to do the supernatural. In our passage this morning, John chapter 6, we're gonna learn that God can do a lot with very little. Let me say that again. God can do a lot with very little. God can do things far greater than we could ever imagine. Read with me here, John chapter 6. We're going to first read the first 7 verses of John chapter 6. We read, after this, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias, and a large crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was doing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. Now, the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand, and lifting up his eyes then, and seeing that a large crowd was coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to get just a little. And you see, this story, it's a well-known story. We all read, if you've been in church and Sunday school and in normal Bible reading, the Jesus feeding the 5,000. Now, we often look at, Jesus coming to meet the physical needs. He's got hungry people here, and he multiplies this 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. But we see in this passage that this story, it is about hunger, and it is about Jesus meeting physical needs, but it is far, far more than that. See, this is a story for me. This is a story for you. For those of us who struggle with this feeling that we do not have enough to meet the challenges that face us. Sometimes it feels like we're kind of looking at the world through the opposite ends of binoculars. Have you ever done that? You look at binoculars and it brings what's far close, but if you flip them around, what do you see? It's super far away, right? And we see that the challenges ahead of us seem super magnified. And so when we flip around the binoculars, though, and we look at them in the right way, we see that they are so that they come into focus, and we're able to see magnified. And so sometimes we see our obstacles, the challenges we face, larger than they really are. It seems like we're facing giants when in reality they're not really. But other times we kind of get into the flip side of it, and we see that, our problems are really small, but really they're kind of large. We struggle with this, and when we do that, we can feel like we are inadequate, like we do not have the ability to do what God has called us to do. Picking up in verses 8 through 14, we read this. It says, one of his disciples, Andrew, which was Simon Peter's brother, he said to him, There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many? Now, just as an aside, the 2 fish that were here, we're not talking catfish, all right? We're not talking Alaskan cod, all right? We're not talking about prime types of fish, right? In the original language that gives this notion that the fish we're thinking of are sardines, right? Now, I wouldn't eat sardines on its own, but imagine, trying to multiply sardines. So back to verse 10. So Jesus said, have the people sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, about 5,000 in number. Now Jesus then took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they had eaten their fill, he told his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments that nothing may be lost. So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten. And when the people saw the sign that he had done, they said, this is indeed the prophet, Prophet, who is to come into the world. Now, when it comes to your faith, do you find yourself more like Philip? Philip saying, he's like, there is no way that we're going to be able to feed all of these people. Just send them home, let them get full, and then let them come back, and then they'll be ready to listen to what Jesus has to say to them. Philip's he's the negative Nancy, right? There's just, we can never accomplish, we can't do this, we're doing too much, we can't handle this. Then we got Andrew, right? And Andrew he's like, there might be a way, we might be able to do this, but, I'm just not sure about it. I just don't think we can. I know, yes, if everything worked out just perfectly, we might be able to accomplish this, but, it's not for me. I don't think I can handle this. But then on the other hand, we've got Jesus. And Jesus says, guys, what are you all worrying about? I got this. Let me take care of it, and we'll be all right. Which one do you consider? Are you Philip or Andrew or Jesus? See, Jesus showed us in this passage that even if all we have is just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, that it is enough when it's dedicated to God. God, He is going to multiply whatever we offer Him. And He's going to make it not just a little bit to kind of get us close, but He is going to make it more than adequate for us to meet our challenges, whatever they may be. But we have to do 2 things. First, we must offer what we do have. We must offer what we have. I mean, what would have happened if the boy said, no, these are my bread, this is my fish. You can't have it. We must offer what little we do have so that God can multiply it. But secondly, we must have faith in what God can do with what we offer Him. See, sometimes we offer a little bit what we have, but we don't have the faith. We don't have the belief that, yes, God can take the small things that we have, the small, abilities we have, the small little bit of money that I've got, the little bit of time that I've got, the little bit of knowledge that I've got, and multiply that and to do great things with the little bit that we have. So we must offer what we have, and we must have faith in God and what God can do with what we offer Him. I want us to flip over to the book of Luke. It's the same story here, the feeding of the 5,000. The interesting fact about this miracle, it is the only miracle that Jesus performed that is listed in all 4 of the Gospels. But Luke kind of gives us a little different take on this passage. So I want us to look here at Luke chapter 9, verses 12 through 17. Luke 9:12 through 17. We read, "Now the day began to wear away, and the 12 came and said to him, 'Send the crowd away to go into the surrounding villages and countryside to find lodging and get provisions, for we are here in a desolate place.' But he said to them, 'You give them something to eat.' They said, 'We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we are going to go and buy food for all of these people.' For there were about 5,000 men, and far more than that when you count the women and children. And he said to his disciples, 'Have them sit down in groups of about 50 each.'" Make note of that. And they did so. And they had them all sit down. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing over them. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the crowd. Then they all ate and were satisfied. And what was left over was picked up, 12 baskets of broken pieces. In Luke 9:14, we see this detail that Jesus had instructed his disciples to not only to gather the crowd, but he wanted them to break the crowd up, to organize the crowd into smaller numbers, right? Into groups of 50. Now, this passage doesn't tell us exactly why Jesus wanted to do this, but I think there's a few things that we can draw from this. And the first one is that Jesus didn't want anyone to get lost in the crowd. Sometimes when you see such a vast number of talking, somewhere, some historians say it could have been anywhere up to 12, 15,000 people total there. That if everybody just gets in one line and goes, and then sometimes it's easy for people to get lost in the crowd. But we know that Jesus places great value on each individual person. The second thing that I think we can draw from the fact that Jesus wanted to split the crowd up into smaller groups is that it doesn't allow any of his disciples to hide. It requires that all of them have a part in feeding the people. Now, sometimes when we just kind of lump everybody together, we think, oh, well, you know what, we'll just let them handle it, and we'll just kind of stand in the background. I'm more of a behind-the-scenes kind of guy. You know what, I support this. I think this is great, but you know what, these other disciples, you know what, they got better gifts. They're more people persons. They can handle this. But when you break it up into smaller groups, it allows each of the disciples to take part in the mission and the ministry that God has given them. So when we read this passage, and this is one that, man, God has I've been reading over and over and over again for the last few months. And God has just really been working in my heart on this to share this with you. And there's many different applications to this passage. All of us can apply this to our own individual lives. Right? I mean, we all feel inadequate at times, right? If you're not, then you're lying to me. Right? We all feel inadequate, that we're not able to do what somebody else might be able to do. You know, they're smarter, they're better looking, they're stronger than I am. They got more money than I've got. They can, but we can see that as long as we are faithful with the little bit that we have, good stewards of what God has given us, and we allow Him to take hold of that He can multiply that and to do amazing things. But I want to apply this specifically to our own church. As I've coming into year 2 of my tenure here as pastor at Central Baptist, I've really been just seeking God's guidance and wisdom as to how to lead our church, and how can He move. And the thing is kind of like we talk about just lumping the entire crowd together. Sometimes when we just look at everything from a kind of a 50,000 foot view, it's easy for certain things to kind of get left out, to get overlooked. And the thing is that God values all people. Right, and that is true of the church, right? Whether it is the infant or the elderly. Everyone is important to God. But the thing is, sometimes when we just look at the church as a whole, is sometimes when we do that, it can become kind of daunting, and it's like, where do we start? And it kind of paralyzes us. It's like, because there's so much to do, we end up not doing anything. And so as I share this, and I've talked about this for some time now, is God has just really brought to my heart, convicted me of the need to invest in our children. In part, our own children here in our church, but also in those children that are in our community, that are around us. And it's true of for a couple of different reasons. And I'm not saying children are the only thing, and it's not the only thing that we're going to do. But God, man, it's just one of those. God has just won't let it go. And I think one of the reasons is because we find that God places great value in children in the Bible. I mean, we see that even in this own miracle. Who had the bread and the fish? It was a little boy. God used a boy's bread and fish to be able to multiply that to do great things. But secondly, is that studies have shown, and this is true of me, and it's true of many of you as well, is that most professions of faith, most kids most people who give their life to Jesus do so in their childhood years. Right? It's just the kind of just based on what studies have shown us. You know, we see that many people, even in our own church, I love just spending the last years hearing stories, especially people that have grown up in our church. We've reaped the benefit of this church's investment in young people, all the way back to when we had the thriving children's ministry, kids all in the church. What is that? I believe it was the Kingdom Kids. Is that right? Did I get the name? King's Kids. All right, there we go. King's Kids. Yeah, to RAs, to GAs, and to see how many people that are now not just kids that can appreciate, but are still in the church, that grew up in these ministries, in these programs. So what I want us to do over the next year, we'll see how it goes, but I want us to kind of take what we've done in the past and have the next version of it. I want us to kind of expand what we're already doing. I'm grateful for the faithful people who are pouring into our children in Sunday school and Mission Friends and the different things that we do, but I want to kind of take what we are doing and expand that, make it a little bit larger, not just for our own kids, but again for the purpose of outreaching to others. So as I've proposed, and I'm not going to go into all of the details, but I've shared it in business meeting with different committees and groups, but is to take our Wednesday night time to have kind of a little more comprehensive children's programming. We've already talked about entering to provide a dinner for them through the USDA, to have times of Bible teaching, scripture memorization. Right, to make sure that the gospel is clear and they have the opportunity to put their faith and trust in it. Have time for recreation. Kids need to get a little bit of their energy out and have a fun way and an uplifting way to have recreation and music. Let me tell you, I love music, and my love for music comes from the times where I was a kid in children's choir and growing up and continuing to sing in that. So in all of these things, it is to help to grow our children in the faith, to teach them about Jesus, to teach them the importance of the church and why we come and why we do what we do. But in order to do something like this, we've got some challenges. We've got some needs. The challenge, it's not money. We got plenty of money to do this. Right? It's not facilities. Church-wise, I think we've got some of the best facilities in the entire county. Our greatest challenge, from what I've seen and what almost everybody else has told me, is that we need servants to serve. And oftentimes we talk about people to kind of come into the church to serve as we see them as volunteers. And I'd like to kind of get away from that language. Because when we volunteer, and I'm a huge proponent of volunteering, we're going to do it with the Salvation Army ringing the bells, is that volunteering is something that we do that when we have time and when we have just to kind of do it here or there. And it's not really biblical language. The Bible talks about servants, people serving in the church. And I saw a tweet the other day, and it said, if we knew that today was your last day, what would you do? Many of us, we'd have a great time, we'd blow all of our money, do whatever. And they said, but what did Jesus do on his last day? He took off his robe, he put a towel around his waist, and he knelt on his knees, and he washed the feet of his disciples. See, we serve because Christ has served us. It's very different than just volunteering, just putting your name on a sign-up sheet. We need people, and I don't really necessarily want to get into all of the specifics, because sometimes we think that we have to have everything figured out again in order to do it, and we're not there. But we need people that are good at organizing and administration, are good with papers and filing and seeing how things work. We need people that are good at teaching, particularly teaching the Bible. We need others that maybe you're not able to come on a Wednesday night, but are able to go out and to pick up the materials that we need, so that the kids have crafts and the things that we need to do what we need on Wednesday nights. We need people that maybe you're not teaching, that are just there. People that can just listen to the children, to recite their Bible verses, to encourage, to help them. People to work in with the food. Now, where the food's going to be prepared, but we still have to have people to serve it and to make sure we don't have any food fights in the fellowship hall, that kind of thing. We need people who have a passion for missions, to teach our children what it means to put service above ourselves. We need those to help with music. That not just to teach music and the notes and everything, but why do we worship Jesus? See, the thing is, we need lots of people. But we don't just need volunteers. We need people who are servants. This is the what. This is what I want us to do, but I haven't really told so much of the why. I want to close here with this, and honestly, it has. It's just, it's just rocked my world over the last few months. I'm so grateful. I've shared it many times in my time here in Maysville at Central Baptist. I have to tell you, the most rewarding thing that I've done is not getting up here every Sunday to preach or to teach or to hang out with you all, to getting to pour my life into you. Really, the most rewarding thing that I have done has also been the most frustrating thing that I have done. And it's been coaching my daughter's soccer team. You know what? Back in the summer, Riley came to me and said, "Daddy, I want to play soccer at the Boys and Girls Club, and I want you to be my coach." Now, Riley, how can you say no, right? And so I did, and I am so grateful that I did. Again, it's one of the most rewarding. When I saw these boys and girls, 5 and 6 year olds, I saw a picture of heaven. I saw young kids that are from different ethnicities, different socioeconomic statuses, different home lives, different levels of skill and abilities, come together and to love each other. Now, don't get me wrong, there were many days I wanted to pull my hair out. In fact, I can recall at the end of one practice, one of the moms came and said, "I don't understand how you have the patience that you have." And I really wish I had some deep spiritual, response to give her. But this is what I told her. I said, "I just kept telling myself I can do anything for an hour." I did. And I wasn't lying. But that was the exception, not the rule. Mostly I enjoyed it. Oh, I looked forward each Tuesday night going to practice and each Saturday going to the games. And, it really, it hit home to me the very last game that we had. Because most of the kids on my team do not have a mom and a dad in their home. And after our last game was over, we all got our participation trophies. And so, but I had to go check. We didn't know where they were. And so I said, I'm going to go run and try to find our trophies. And y'all just stay here, and then I'll be right back, because snack time is the most important time in a 5-year-old soccer game. But this one little girl, and I'm going to be honest with you, she was the cause of most of my frustration. But she said, Coach, I want to go with you. And I said, no, stay here, eat your snacks. And she's very persistent. She says, no, I'm going with you. I was like, okay, honey. All right. So we're walking to where they had the trophies, and she grabs my hand. And I was like, no, this is kind of weird. No, I don't, no, I'm holding, another little girl's hand. And she said, no, I'm holding your hand. I was like, okay. But it hit me, and it hit me like a Mack truck. The reason why she wanted to hold my hand is because every Tuesday and every Saturday, she saw that that's what I did with Riley as we're walking off the field, so that Riley doesn't get hit by a car in the parking lot. But she wanted to experience a little bit of that. It was a few days later. That's one of the days they were out of school. Riley and her both go to the Y together. And so I dropped off Riley that morning. They were in the gym, and this girl's on the complete other side of the gym, and she gets into a dead sprint to run over to come to me, to give me a hug. And she doesn't just give me a hug. She grabs my leg and won't let go. I said, honey, I got to go. I've got things I can't. And she did not want me to leave. All of this because of just 1 hour, one night a week, and just an hour or so on a Saturday for 6-7 weeks. It's because this girl does not have a dad in her life. Now, I can't be her father. I can't. That's not my role. That I'm not her dad. But, I have the ability to point her to the Heavenly Father. See, there's our kids, and particularly those in our community, are so many obstacles that they have to overcome. Makes what we have just pale in comparison. And I mean, a lot of you work with kids. You've told me, right? I mean, it's the odds are stacked against them. I mean, it's almost a miracle if they even just survive adolescence. But we have the ability to not just help them here on earth, but to help them to live life for eternity. I had another girl, in fact, she's been in our church quite a bit. She's been in our worship services. She's been to our different events that we've been to Bible school. It was recently she asked me this question. She said, what is prayer? She's been in church, been here, and asked me, what is prayer? I tell you, that brought tears to my eyes. Because I came to the realization that it is very likely that kids in our own community, kids that we interact with sometimes on a daily basis, that unless we teach them, they will live their entire lives without knowing Jesus. And I don't know about you, but I can't in good conscience stand before God in heaven and say, well, man, it was just hard. I was busy. I just didn't have the time. kids, and we talk about that in other countries, right? But they're here in our own community that do not know Jesus. Unless we take it to them, it likely won't. I'm going to be honest, part of this is self-serving with the children's ministry, because let me tell you, the greatest desire of my heart is that my daughter and my son come to know Jesus. And I know that many of you have that same desire as well, because you've told me. But regardless of what we're going to do here at Central Baptist Church, we teach our son and daughter the Bible at home. We teach them about Jesus. And I know you do as well. And yes, it is a partnership. We come together to work these things out. But God, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And I know the reality. We are super, super busy. I've been in the line where I've worked all day and head straight to church on Wednesday night. Sometimes, if I'm lucky, I'm able to drive through McDonald's and get a Big Mac on the way driving to church. I've experienced the exhaustion that comes to where I get home and I hit straight to bed. I don't even brush my teeth and just fall and I'm out. There's been so many times I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this. But you know what? It always gets done. It's because so often we think of the world through our earthly eyes that it's up to me. I've got to do this. But what we're not doing is we're not thinking of it biblically. We're not just offering up our bread and our fish and letting God do the multiplication. See, God gives us the ability to do things we never think we were able to do. He gives us the resources that we do not have to do on our own. Now, He doesn't do it for our own selfish gain, but He does it for His glory and to build His kingdom. So the question I'm going to leave us with this morning is, will you bring Jesus your small amounts of bread and fish? Whatever it is you have, will you bring it and allow Him to do something far greater than you could ever imagine? Would you pray with me? Oh God, I come before you right now. I just realizing our own inadequacy, our own limitations. Whether it is our time, our energy, our abilities, our money. God, we acknowledge that before you this morning, but we do so out of humility. God, we cry out to you this morning. God, would you take whatever little we have? Would you multiply it to do amazing things? Amazing things in our own lives, but more than that, God, amazing things in the lives of those who have yet to hear the name of Jesus. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.